Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's session. It's glad to see that at least a couple of you have turned up. We're going to pick up from where we had left off yesterday. Since there are only a couple of people here, I might need to call out to some of you. So, this person whose name is Chapola King, how do I address you? Can you just give me your name? The person who's here in this meeting as Chapola King, can you please state your name just so I know what to call you? Since there are very few people. Right? Right. So we had been discussing presentation skills in yesterday's session, and today we're going to be going ahead with what we had been talking about. Yesterday we saw that there are three key elements to any good presentation, namely the message or the story, the visuals or the slides, and the delivery itself. Yesterday, we had looked at what the message of the story is in relation to a presentation and how its script can be drafted and edited. We had also seen what are the things to be kept in mind when we are preparing our slide deck for a business presentation or for a classroom presentation. Now, the one thing that is remaining is the element of delivery. Delivery, or rather our oral presentation, is perhaps the most unpredictable aspect of a presentation. In fact, like we said yesterday, if you can be a little flexible with your oral delivery, then you are likely to feel much more comfortable with presentations. We'll have a set deck of slides, we'll have a set script, and all of that is well and good. However, when it is time for us to speak, if we can adapt to changes or situations or questions or our audience by being flexible with our oral presentation, then at the end of it, you will realize that your presentation has gone much better than it could have if you had stuck to your given script or your prepared script. So ideally, you're all required to be a little flexible, a little open to change when it comes to your oral presentation. This doesn't mean that you're underprepared. This just means that you're willing to segue away from the set script. You can only do this if you are calm, composed, and confident. If you're underconfident, then you'll not be able to adapt to the context or the situation through your oral presentation. I hope I am audible to all of you and that you are able to see the slides on the screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much for responding. If you have any queries about the recorded sessions or about the PPT availability, I've posted a message in the chat box. We'll also address further queries towards the end of the session. This is just to ensure that there aren't a great deal of interruptions to our session. What are the things that we can do before our presentation? We've already seen that it's well and good to be prepared. It's also very helpful to be a little flexible with our script. What else can we do prior to our presentation in order to ensure that things go smoothly? We can, of course, rehearse. We can rehearse by ourselves. We can also rehearse with other people, our friends, for instance. Now, what rehearsal does for us is to make sure that one, our presentation and our slides are going hand in hand with one another. You're not just giving your information on the slides on the one hand and speaking about something that is completely unrelated on the other hand. Okay? You need to make sure that your presentation and your slides go in sync with one another. Rehearsal also helps us to correct any mistakes that might be there either in our script or in our slides. Another thing that rehearsal can help us with is in sticking to our time limit. We can make sure that our presentation is being wound up within the allotted time frame. If we are exceeding the time limit, then we have the provision to edit our script or to alter our presentation such that we do not go beyond the allotted time frame. It's always helpful to have your script with you. What you need to make sure is that you're not just reading stuff out of the script. You can refer the script on and off. You can make sure that you're going according to the plan of the presentation. However, your audience should not get the feeling that you're just reading stuff out of a note or out of a document. It's always helpful to go early to a presentation, regardless of whether it is being done online or if it's being done in person. Reaching the venue ahead of time allows us a little time to calm down and to get acquainted with the surroundings, to get any technicalities sorted if there is such a requirement. When you're talking to an audience, the most important thing in that act of communication, remember, this is a communication skills workshop, and we're just discussing presentation skill as a communication skill. When you're addressing an audience, when you're addressing a listener, the most important thing there is to make the audience feel as if you are talking to them. You are addressing them. You're not just randomly reeling off information. You're not just speaking about random stuff. You are actually addressing your listener. You are speaking with the express purpose of making yourself understood, right? So your audience should be able to get that feeling through your presentation. If this is an online presentation and if you are in fact presenting on video, then maintaining eye contact is very important. Knowing where the camera is, making sure that you're looking into the camera rather than looking elsewhere is just as important as maintaining eye contact is important in a physical presentation. However, as you can see, here I'm not making a video presentation. I am only using my voice. Even if that is the case, then you should be able to make your audience feel as if you are addressing them. You're talking to them. If you are randomly reeling off information, then your audience will not feel as if they're a part of that presentation. You should be dressed for the presentation. Now, dress well does not really mean dress expensively. It simply means dress however it is that your part here is calling for. Sometimes it requires very formal attire, business presentations, for instance. sometimes it requires semi-formal attire. Whatever the situation calls for, make sure that you're dressing accordingly. Now, the idea is to appear as a person who is capable of speaking on the topic that you're going to be speaking on. So, visually, you're just trying to communicate, look here, I am well sorted, I am ready, I'm thoroughly prepared, and I am someone who is perfectly capable of speaking about this topic. That is simply the idea that you're trying to communicate visually. Sometimes this was very prevalent during the time of COVID and the lockdown. We had several Zoom calls or Gmeet presentations. Now, given the fact that you are making these presentations while you're in the comfort of your home, several of us chose to go with attire that was certainly not proper for the occasion. Skipping pants, for instance. You feel like just wearing formal attire on your torso should be enough, given that this is an online presentation. However, you need to make sure that you're dressed for the part and not dressed partially for the part. When you're speaking, this does not really just, um, this isn't just about presentations per se. Whenever you're speaking, you should speak slowly and you should speak clearly. If you speak too fast, whoever is listening to you will not be able to comprehend what you're saying. So, in the interest of your listener, you should try to speak at a nominal speed and you should try to enunciate your words clearly. Several of us have several struggles with enunciation. For example, you might be wearing some kind of an orthodontic apparatus. This is just an example. This can affect the clarity of your speech. Okay? So the important thing is to bear in mind that you have such an apparatus, that your enunciation might be challenged because of this particular situation. And therefore, to take extra care to ensure that your audience is understanding you. We, we can all be really nervous when it's time for us to speak in front of an audience. Being nervous is fine. It's very normal. However, showing your nervousness outwardly to the point that it interferes with the quality of your presentation is what we're trying to prevent. Okay? Taking deep breaths and making sure that we're calm and collected before we step onto the stage to make the presentation can be very helpful in bringing our nervousness under control. And lastly, do not exceed the time limit that is given to you. Do not extend your speech. Your audience might be very, very patient. They might be uh, listening to you with great deal of attention. However, it is up to you to not test the patience of that audience by going beyond your allotted time frame. So, in the interest of propriety, you make sure that you're sticking to the time that is given to you. Anything that is unclear so far, anything that you want me to speak further about, anybody who's feeling at a loss because they were not able to attend yesterday's session. Right. Thank you, Ayush. Now we're going to look at how we can actually structure our oral presentation. Any presentation will have a beginning, a middle, and an end. An introduction, the body of the presentation, and a conclusion. Oftentimes, we are very well prepared with the body of the presentation. However, our introduction might be a little insufficient. Our conclusion might be a little too rushed. So, what are the things to be kept in mind when we are trying to give an introduction? The point is to grab the attention of your listeners. The point is also to clearly outline what the things you're going to be talking about are. What are some of the ways in which you can grab the attention of your audience? You can ask a rhetorical question. What is a rhetorical question? This is a rhetorical question. For instance, when I ask you what is a rhetorical question, I am not expecting you to give me an answer. Rather, I am just trying to tell you, I am going to tell you what a rhetorical question is. So you're not expecting information in response to your question. Rather, you're just trying to state the point. You're trying to decide the direction of the conversation through this question. You can emphasize your own viewpoint through a rhetorical question. Okay? You can ask a rhetorical question when you are trying to make your introduction. You can also state an interesting fact, a fun fact, let's say. Yes, Rohit, you have a question?
Ma'am, can you give the example for rhetorical question?
An example for a rhetorical question would be, let's say a politician is making a speech. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
And that politician is addressing a group of farmers. And so this politician asks, is there any profession that is more important than farming in our country at this moment? The politician is not expecting that audience to give him a factual answer. Rather, the politician is simply trying to illustrate that there is no profession that is greater than farming in our country at this moment. And by asking that question, he is also trying to say that he is on the side of the farmers. He
Okay, ma'am.
accomplished all of these things with just a single question. Now that he has emphasized that he is on the side of the farmers, he can go on to say several other things that illustrate how well aligned he is or well aware he is of the needs of the farmers. All of this is going to make him very popular, which is exactly what he wants. The intention behind the rhetorical question is not to get a response per se, rather, it is to effectively communicate some idea or the other. You can lay emphasis on something, you can clearly state what your position is simply by asking a question. That is a rhetorical question. Is that clear now?
Yes, ma'am. No, it is
Okay.
to convey something out of.
Yes, it is trying to convey something, but you are not writing it as a sentence. You are asking it as a question, which is also an interesting strategy because every time you ask a question, you are assuming that there is somebody who's listening to the question. This is another way in which you're trying to get your audience involved, regardless of whether you expect a factual answer or not. This is another way in which you can actually get your audience involved with the presentation.
Okay, ma'am. It should be included in the presentation to like, to um, attention of the audience also.
Yes, all of these are strategies that you use to grab the attention of your audience. That is correct. You can also tell a short story or an anecdote. An anecdote is an incident that has actually happened. A story can be fictional, but an anecdote is something that has actually happened. It's an incident.
Okay, ma'am. Got it.
All of these are strategies that allow you to grab the attention of your listeners. What you should not omit from an introduction is what comes next. You should state the purpose of your presentation and quickly outline what the things you're going to be discussing in this presentation are. This ensures clarity in terms of communication. Your audience won't feel as if, oh no, I'm going into this presentation not really knowing what is coming after this. Yeah? You don't want them to be clueless. You want them to understand what is going to happen after the introduction so that they can be adequately involved in that discussion. Now we've discussed the introduction part. Let's say because of how thoroughly you've done your research, you're going to do the body of the presentation very well, which brings us to the conclusion part. Conclusions often tend to be really, really tiring, primarily because you've already run through a great deal of information. You have perhaps pulled an all-nighter. We don't really know. You're sleep deprived. Perhaps you skipped your breakfast. So you're hungry. You already feel like you are done with most of the presentation. You would simply like to wind up right now. So people tend to rush through their conclusions a lot. The goal is to avoid that. In your conclusion, you should be able to quickly summarize what you've presented on. Why? Because people have very fickle attention spans. People listen, it's like they turn their ears on, and then after like 20 seconds, they turn their ears off. After another 30 seconds, they turn their ears on. After like another 10 seconds, the ears go off again. So there will be parts of your presentation that they have heard, parts of it which they have understood, and there might even be a couple of blind spots. This is just how humans listen. Don't blame your audience. Everyone listens like this. So if you can quickly summarize the things that you have presented already, then that would make them better aware of what has been covered in this presentation. You restate your major points. If there is a call for action, what is a call for action? Yesterday we had discussed different strategies for preparing our draft, for ordering or structuring information in our presentation. One such strategy was the AIDA formula. And what was AIDA? Attention, interest, desire, and action. We use the AIDA formula or the AIDA strategy when you are trying to make a persuasive presentation. Imagine an advertisement. At the end of the advertiser's purpose is to drive you to take an action which will bring them profit, which will be advantageous to them. it is, let's say, a toothpaste, or let's say a refrigerator, or a car, you see the advertisement, it grabs your attention, they develop your interest in the product, they completely make you desire the product, and at the end of it, it is up to you to take the action, which is go and buy the product. Right? So the advertiser will simply place a call for action there. Not just an advertiser, it's just a very clear example. If you are trying to make any kind of a persuasive presentation, a sales pitch, for instance, you would, in your conclusion, restate your call for action. Therefore, we expect you to invest in this product. Therefore, we expect you to buy this product for yourself, which will be immensely useful for you. And after the call for action, there will be your exit line, your thank you. Remember that a call for action is not something that is going to be there in all presentations. So it's up to you to adjudge whether a call for action should be a part of your presentation or not. Give me just a couple of minutes. I'll just have a quick drink of water and rejoin you. Right. Thank you very much. Any questions so far? All good? Right. After your presentation, what can you do then? You've just concluded. You feel like you've just delivered every bit of information that you'd wanted to deliver. You feel a sense of success in it and a sense of relief. What do you do next? You ask if anyone has any questions. And when people ask you questions, you take your time to process those questions. Sometimes, if you don't understand the question, you can always ask them to repeat the question. If it's a long question, you can break it down into more manageable chunks of information, piece by piece, and address the question in that same fashion. People can be cantankerous. Cantankerous is irritable and ready to fight. Yeah? When people ask you questions, sometimes their only intention might be to get a raise out of you. If that is the case, then make sure to keep your cool. You only respond to the question. You don't react to the question. Do not be impulsive. Okay? Keep your own impulses in check. Sometimes you might not know the answer to a question, which is perfectly normal because we're not people who know everything. If you don't know the answer to a question, you can very politely tell the person who is asking you a question that you're not quite aware of the answer to that question at the moment. You can look it up and get back to them at a time of their convenience. This willingness to accept that we don't really know everything and this enthusiasm to actually find out what you don't already know can be very valuable, both in a classroom setting and in a professional setting. The important thing is to not get provoked by a question or by anybody who's asking you a question. In addition to the kinds of presentations that we've discussed so far, you can also get a 2-minute argumentative speech. This is most likely used in recruitment drives, placement drives, interviews, etc. They are simply trying to see how well you present your standpoint and how respectful you are towards other people's standpoints. The kind of topic that is used for a 2-minute argumentative speech is a debatable topic. If you remember properly from yesterday's session, then there is a specific strategy that we use in order to structure information when we are given a debatable topic to present. Does anyone here remember what that strategy was? A debatable topic. We had spoken about a certain strategy. We spoke about the PREP method or the position, reason, example, position method. Essentially, we are using the same method in a 2-minute argumentative speech. When you're asked to make a 2-minute speech, you might not get a lot of preparation time. It can be very impromptu. So you can't really think in terms of a slide deck. Rather, you have to think in terms of how you're going to structure your oral presentation. An introduction will most certainly be there. Then you state your position on that argument or on that subject. Remember, this is a debatable topic, meaning there isn't one single answer to this topic. Instead, there are several perspectives or viewpoints, of which yours is one. So you state your viewpoint, give reasons as to why you've stated that viewpoint, give any examples that you might know, and restate your position in order to conclude. This is the PREP method. Position, reason, example, position. Okay, so I want you to think up any questions that you might have on the basis of the things that we've covered so far. Any questions, any clarifications or queries, let me know. Right. In a 2-minute argumentative speech, I'm assuming that nobody has any questions. If you have, please feel free to ask. In a 2-minute argumentative speech, another thing that you can use in order to develop your content more effectively is to anticipate potential counter arguments. Remember, there isn't one single right answer to a debatable topic. So you have taken one perspective, and another person is perfectly at liberty to take a perspective that is at odds with yours, that does not agree with your perspective. Okay? So you can anticipate counter arguments and address those counter arguments in your own speech. When you're addressing your counter arguments, you should remember to remain respectful of the other person's opinions. So you should not try to badmouth the other person or anybody who might hold a counter argument, a counter perspective. Instead, you should simply try to refute those counter arguments, giving valid reasons, and conclude by saying that this is why your own position concerning the matter remains as you had stated at the beginning of your speech. So you're restating or reiterating your original argument or position in a manner of concluding your speech. Let's look at some of these topics. Humans should extend their technological potential and colonize other planets. There is no single right answer here. Every person is entitled to his or her own opinion concerning this statement. Security cameras invade our privacy and should be banned. Different people will have different opinions concerning this topic. So your focus should be on stating your own position, giving reasons to back up that position, giving examples to illustrate that position, and then anticipating any counter arguments that you possibly can anticipate, and concluding by restating your original position. Living in very cold climates is preferable to living in very hot climatic conditions. Again, there isn't a single right answer or a single wrong answer. People have their own opinions on the topic. Technology is making people more stupid every day. Some might agree, some might not agree. So your speech should be structured on the basis of what your position concerning the topic is. Right. We have. Okay. Do you want me to quickly run through what we had covered in yesterday's session before we go into our recap quiz? Okay. Right. So let's just quickly go back and see what we had discussed yesterday. Any good presentation will have three main elements: the message or the story, the slides or the visuals, and delivery. When you're trying to craft your story or your message, we need to do a great deal of research, form a rough draft, find the structure of your presentation, and then edit that rough draft. Make sure that your draft is minimal in terms of words that you use in order to communicate your ideas. There are some strategies that we can use in order to outline or draft our script, our content. Some of these strategies are the PREP method, the position, reason, example, position method, which we just discussed. The past, present, future method, which is ideal for those kinds of topics which require you to present a great deal of information. Historical information, for instance. Business information, for instance, that go across a period of time. And then your objective is to make a prediction on the basis of the content that you've presented so far. So you'll have to first speak about what was there in the past, then speak about what is there in the present, and then Tell your audience what can be expected in the future. So you're essentially making a prediction about the future on the basis of past data as well as present data. Let's say if some kind of a business problem, you're trying to make some sort of a policy, then you will need to use the problem cause solution method. Identify the problem, seek out the causes for the problem, find a solution or suggest a solution for the problem. Remember, none of these strategies are rules written in stone. Rather, these are just helpful pointers that you can use when you are on your own and when you are trying to structure your information for a presentation. And then the one that we discussed already, the AIDA method: attention, interest, desire, and action, which we use when we are trying to make persuasive presentations. What we should emphasize or prioritize when we are making our slide deck is one, to include all the necessary information, and two, to prioritize reading. That is, whatever content you put on your slide should be legible to the person who is listening to you or the person who is viewing those slides. So your color combination, your font combination should all be professional and should be such that your audience has no trouble reading the content that is on the slide. Right. You can use a combination of serif fonts and sans serif fonts. Serif fonts just have that little decorative hoot here. Sans serif fonts do not. You can use a combination of both serif and sans serif fonts when you are trying to pick a font combination for your presentation. Sometimes you can face a certain situation called death by PowerPoint. You are too reliant on the slides. So reliant that without the slides, you can't make a presentation. If that is the case, then you will undergo death by PowerPoint. If you've dumped too much of data or text onto your slides, once again, death by PowerPoint is what's going to happen. And lastly, if you fail to customize your speech according to the profile of the audience, you would not speak the same way to a prospective investor as you would speak to a student or a classmate. So you should keep that in mind. Now, look at this recap quiz. What's wrong with the slide given below? How would you correct it? Can somebody tell me what's wrong with this slide and what they're going to do to correct this slide?
Ma'am, the title should be in upper font and bold
The title should be bold. Okay. What was the first thing that you said? The title should be?
in capital fonts.
You want it to be in all caps. So that's not necessary. You can write your title using title case. Title case is when just the first letter is in capital letter. Okay, it doesn't have to be all caps, but yes, having it in bold face would be helpful. It would help with it would aid your viewer in reading the content more clearly. What else is wrong with the slide? Just the title?
Also, color combination, ma'am, like
Color combination is
using
not right. Yes, what else?
light colors for title, and it should be much better if we use dark color and a light color background for representing something.
Okay, very good. That is one change. Nothing else? Yes, it makes reading
Um,
so difficult. Yes, Ayush, go on. What?
there is too much of textual element.
too much of text on this single slide.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
it's very difficult to read these long lines of text, especially because it's very cluttered. There are 6 points right here, six numbered points. Ideally, it should be more readable. So look at this slide. The content has simply been rearranged such that there is adequate white space between each point. Each point is set off using a little icon and an individual title. Let's look at this. Advantages of remote work. This is a slide. Look at the kind of difference that you can perceive at a single glance between this slide and this slide. Remember, the content is not different. The content is the same. However, the second slide makes sure that the content has been arranged much better than it was in the first slide. This is another slide with the same content. Benefits of remote work, and it has sharply divided the slide into two halves of two contrasting colors. The idea being one side shows one chunk of opinion, another side shows another chunk of opinion. So obviously, the opinions of the employees and the opinions of the employers are at odds with one another. That is why there is a clear contrast between these two colors right here. Right. This is an even more minimal slide with only a couple of, let's say, subtitles and icons to illustrate what the point is. The reason I'm showing all of these things to you is just to understand how it is that you can organize huge lines of text into a more comprehensive and compatible slide format. You are asked to give a presentation on whether working remotely is the better option for both employers and employees. Which of the following modes of writing a script will you opt for? Remember, this is a debatable topic. For a debatable topic, what strategy do we use?
Prep.
Prep method. Yes, you would use the prep method for a debatable topic. You are the head of sponsorships for the annual college fest, and one of your biggest sponsors has backed out last minute, and now you find yourself short of funds. Which of the following modes of presentation would you opt for when you want to convene a meeting with your team members to resolve this? So there is a problem for which you need a solution. So which of these techniques would you use in this given context?
Problem, cause, solution.
Problem cost solution method is what you would use in this context. Yes, very good and thank you. Right. I have a subsidiary question here. You are the head of sponsorships for the annual college fest, and one of your biggest sponsors is backed out last minute, and now you find yourself short of funds. However, you have a backup option. There is another prospective investor or sponsor waiting, but you need to persuade them to invest in your annual college fest. If you want to persuade them to invest in your annual college fest, what kind of a strategy would you use?
AIDA method.
The AIDA method or the AIDA method. Attention, interest, desire, and action, because action is to be prioritized in this case. You have been asked to give a presentation on the evolution of the telecommunication sector in India. Which of the following modes of presentation would you opt for? Remember, a lot of information chronologically separated. Which of these would be best suited for that?
D option.
B. The
Past,
past,
present,
present, future.
future method. Yes, very good. Thank you, everybody. I'm very glad to know that you've understood everything that we were trying to say here. Right. So, once again, let me just quickly summarize. Before you go into a presentation, prepare adequately. Even if you're a very good speaker, if you are not thorough with your preparation, then your presentation will suffer in quality. You'll have to design or make professional looking slides. This does not mean that you have to make designer slides, that you have to be very, very adept at design in order to make a good deck of slides. Okay? You should be minimal in both time and design. If you're not minimal, then it tends to give you more freedom to ramble on about unrelated topics. And whoever is listening to you might not be interested in it. So you need to make sure that you're both minimal in terms of content as well as in terms of slide design. Right. That is my presentation, the end of today's session. Any questions, you guys?
Ma'am, that uh, I may ask?
Yes, of
May I ask?
course.
Ma'am, the file we sent to you, how we know that that file is seen by someone or not?
I don't understand your question, Ayush. Can you?
Like the first quiz, as you recap that first quiz, the page of digital enterprises, we have said to done this in a page and present it.
Digital enterprises.
I'm
Uh,
asking about the activity question one.
okay. Activity
Hmm.
question. This is the one, no?
Yeah,
This is the one? Ah, okay.
we that file that we have to upload it, and how we know that our uploaded file is being seen or any changes that we required to do with that.
I really don't understand your question. If somebody else has understood Aisha's question, could you please help me out with this? Someone has understood something. Can you please just kind of mediate? Because I can't understand what he is trying to ask.
Ma'am, I think he is trying to ask that whatever the activity or the questions that he has submitted in the particular portal, how he will able to understand that whether the submitted whatever the solution he has submitted has been graded correctly or not. That is what he is asking.
This is not a graded assignment by any means. No, this is just at the end, something that we have here at the end of this presentation. This is not something that is influencing your grades at all. This is a fun recap quiz. That's it. So there's no question of anybody seeing it or grading it, or of your knowing that somebody has seen it or graded it. Thank you, Shubhajit. That was very helpful.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am,
Right.
I had one more question regarding the presentation only.
Mm.
May I ask?
Yes, of course.
Ma'am, one thing that when we are making a presentation,
Mm.
it's I understand that it's of course it is necessary to make it visually appealing and all those things. But
Mm.
can you just give a rough estimate of the length of the presentation that we can make so that the time is not like it is not lengthy, neither it is too short. It should be like okay type. Like the presentation length should not get outside that thing. Can you just roughly estimate that part?
Yeah, so in our yesterday's session, we had touched upon this topic. Let me just quickly take you back there. Right. Mm. For a typical 10 to 15 minute presentation, The script should not exceed 1800 words. That should be sufficient. Okay?
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
In
Thank
terms
you,
of
ma'am.
slide length, I can't really, like number of slides, people typically say 10 to 12 slides, but that's not something that is, written in stone. Sometimes people also like delimit the number of slides that you can use. You should not use any more than 10 slides. If that is the case, then you will have to limit your presentation like that. The reason why I'm not specifying the number of slides here is because people use slides very differently. Okay. So sometimes some people, they'll dwell on each slide. Some people run through slides very, very quickly. So you can't really specify the number of slides, in a very uniform sort of way. But for a script, this is how it should be.
Yes, ma'am, because the slide, like my font size can also be bigger. So that can make the slides more and more.
Yes, it can. But it also has a great deal to do with the way in which you present, like the way in which you connect your oral presentation with the content on the slides. Some people do that very, very quickly. It's literally like spluttering mustard in oil. Some people, on the other hand, will dwell on each slide. So if you are a slow speaker, then you should use fewer slides. If you are a fast speaker, you can actually use more slides, ensuring that you are still sticking to your time limit.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
That's it. You're welcome. Right, about the recordings. Recordings will be made available in the YouTube playlist for the course after the conclusion of the workshop sessions. The PDF or like the PPT will be available under the supplementary contents or supplementary materials tab. Right. I hope that is clear to everybody. Thank you everyone for joining me today. I sincerely hope that this session was useful to you and that someday when you are required to make presentations, at least some of what we've discussed today will come back to you and will be helpful to you. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, ma'am.